Yeah. Now, what do you remember from, say, before kindergarten?
The earliest thing I remember is a great big huge paddleboard. Thick, really, really long. The biggest thing probably I ever saw. And going out on the, maybe Balboa Bay. For sure, it must have been Balboa Bay.
I thought you meant a paddleboard like you get spanking with.
I never got a spanking because I never did anything bad. And we could outrun Soder, so didn't have to worry. No, the big paddleboard.
About 20 feet long?
Yeah, and really heavy. So I remember that. And I remember going somewhere, I would say Big Bear, maybe with the Giacomellis. And I don't remember what time of the year it was, because I would think snow, but we wouldn't have been out playing hide and seek, so it must have been in the summer. And playing hide and seek, and they must have rented a cabin, or they must have rented and shared with us, or maybe we rented too. I just remember being at the mountains in a cabin somewhere and playing hide and seek, and finding this great spot, and telling somebody else where the spot was. Maybe Mom, because she said, don't tell us where the spot is, because then it's not a good hiding place or something like that. And that was real little. And going to somewhere where there was a little train that went around and around and around. So, Griffith Park or something like that? Hi, sweetie. Maybe Griffith Park. Because there was some kind of little train. That's the earliest I can remember. And then it was like going to the drive-in theater, sitting in the back seat. You have to be, I don't know what ages got in free, but I don't remember Dad going, yeah, you're about 10, right? And I wasn't, of course, but that was to get me in free. So I don't know how old I was then. It's whatever age you start paying at the drive-in. I remember all of our friends thinking, because he was so much, I guess because he was so big and so tall. Because like Mr. Palmer wasn't, Mr. Comstock wasn't. So none of the other dads were, big and tall, so everybody thought he was so huge and so forceful or whatever, deep voice, whatever.
Now, what do you remember in grammar school? Teachers or whatever?
Yeah, Mrs. Schmidt, she went home. She was real fat. She'd go home every night and watch Beanie and Cecil. Like at 6 o'clock at night, and then she'd go on to bed after that. Mrs. K was my other teacher in kindergarten, which I think we all had her. And Mrs. Snyder was my second grade. Probably my favorite teacher. Miss Betzel in third, and on and on. I was such a good kid in school, I remember that. No problem. Good grades. I remember once in 5th grade falling down because I wore moccasins and it rained and it fell down. I was so embarrassed that I went home and didn't go back.
You did school?
I just didn't go back. I couldn't have gone back. And then I remember, of course, once I hit about high school, babysitting you and Peg every day after school. Living next to the Rays, taking Ted and Pam with us and having them over, watching Father Knows Best and all that kind of stuff in the den.
Extracurricular things?
GAA or ice skating. Couldn't do two things. So GAA would have been easier. Not GAA, drill team. Drill team or couldn't do both. So did the drill team. GAA was right after school, which I did do, and then I went home to take care of you guys.
You mean you could have been another Nancy Kerrigan?
I could have. No, I was too clumsy.
High school teachers or anything? Do you remember?
I remember having Mrs. Bighoff when I was a sophomore, and she was very, very Russian, straight here from Russia. teaching geometry, and I just couldn't get the hang of geometry. And Dad said I'd need it the rest of my life, and I really should learn it.
You use it all the time, right?
And the only thing I'm very good at is judging. This box, this stuff will fit in perfectly. This Tupperware, these leftovers will fit in perfectly. This is this size, I can tell by looking, and so on.
Solids and volumes.
That's all I know. I could not get the statements and conditions at all. And I just cried because I did not understand what this woman was talking about at all. And then I had some seniors in there who had to be screw-offs if they were taking this class when they were seniors and I was taking it when I was a sophomore. And math went from bad to worse, and it had always been my very, very favorite subject, which is probably why I'm good at banking, because I don't have to do algebra anymore or geometry.
Okay, after high school, what?
Going to junior college, because they were going to send us there first, and if we did really good and wanted to continue, then they would send us somewhere else, like Cal State Fullerton or away to college or whatever. But just taking that, and I did forget I was Woman of the Year there. That was great, because they let me buy a new dress for that, when usually I wear hand-me-down clothes for my two cousins. They aren't going to want to hear this, are they?
Which two cousins?
Judy and Lene. But anyway, this was a big deal, and get to go get a formal and the whole deal. And other than that, take library science, work at the library, and take my other courses. And then the courses screwed me up, and I never got out of there anyway in 2.5 years. So it took me 14 years to get through that college. And that was it. I mean, that secretarial that I took is so old, except I do get a kick out of doing shorthand because very few people know shorthand. So I mean, I can write, yeah, I can still write it. I can do it myself. Secretly, no one can read it. So I'm pretty okay with that. But like the languages I took are so screwed up because I took French in high school and Spanish in college, and now I don't know which is which, so I don't bother speaking.
Early vacations?
Camping, always. Sleeping bags, no air mattresses, no cots, right on the ground, roughing it. We wanted to go to the beach. Dad worked at the beach, said, we're not going to the beach. I'm sick of being at the beach. So we went camping all the time until I think I was about 15, and then I think Mom and us kids went to the beach. Probably just by ourselves, and then, you know, for like 1 week down at Newport or something, and then that was probably the end of our, I don't think we ever camped after that. But camping always, up to Bishop or somewhere. We used to go see Grandma and Grandpa Big Bear sometimes, but we always roughed it. In fact, we bought that lot up there, but I don't think we ever stayed on it. But it was always camping, always going to rough it.
I'm going out to see him. Because I can even hear him.
Okay, so if you want to get out of there, they're doing something. Okay, come on. We'll move. Check it out.
Early holidays with relatives?
Grandma's side, Christmas Day, Grandma's side, Christmas Eve. Birthdays, I don't really remember celebrating much, except that Grandma used to always make us a great square cake. In fact, I have the cake dish, I think, that the cake plate, I think, that she used to use. Square, green, minty stuff, great cakes. And she used to always make us pajamas and nightgowns. Always, homemade, handmade, every year for Christmas. We used to celebrate almost always at Uncle Dick and Aunt Betty's house. Big 2-story house, open living room, whatever. Huge trees, biggest trees we ever saw. And then Christmas Day with Dad's side. Always had drawings, and almost always had it at Grandma and Grandpa's back in the barn before, because 45 or 50 people could sit there. So that was great. And then that family just kind of, when Grandma and Grandpa died, that was kind of the end of that family get-together deal. except for Grandpa's birthday was usually celebrated in May, around the middle of May, so it was picnic at Kramer Park almost always.
Early jobs?
Well, I don't remember except babysitting. I babysat for people, cleaned houses for people, more babysitting, worked at the library,
Which library?
at the college, but at home I never worked Placentia one.
Travels? Out of the country or?
We traveled to Canada when I was pretty small, because you were pretty small. They tell us we saw our first escalator there, and I really can't remember that. But I'm sure that we stayed with Tom and Mary on the way to there, because I think they lived in Washington, the state of Washington. So I remember we went through Oregon, Washington, Canada, and I remember going down to Mexico, and that was it. All of my at-home days. Since then, I've gone to Colorado a couple of times, and finally New York, and that's it. And up to see you in Sacramento, and see Aunt Betty one year.
Car you had?
A blue station wagon, I guess third hand to me, that I used to haul you and Peg around in, pick up the laundry. Somebody dropped something out of it one time. I think some underwear or something. That was my car to go to college with, and actually, that was like a 55 Ford station wagon. Jimmy and I have had 57 Ford, 2 59 Fords. We had a 58 Corvette that would have been a classic now, but we had to give it up. He had a 32 Ford. 63 Ford, great car, but it's in pieces right now. 74 Ford van, had 200,000 on it, got stolen, full of Nikki stuff. We were moving Nikki. Hard to replace stuff. We had a 79 Ford Courier, got ripped off the same year, 200,000 miles on it. Didn't replace those. I have a Mustang now, 86 Mustang, and then I'm driving Dad's old Cadillac, which is pretty cool. And that's the history of our cars.
And sometime you got married?
Yeah, sometime I got married. That was a long time ago, almost 30 years ago.
You lived in Santa Barbara?
We lived in Santa Barbara first, in a neat little house that had a 6-foot-long drawer in Mike's room that actually people could sleep in, because it was like the Averys slept in drawers when I was little and remembered them. And then we moved to San Diego, and that house was built up on boulders, huge, huge boulders. So we had family get-togethers back then, because it was a real neat, spread-out house, great for entertaining, all hardwood floors and stuff. And that's back when I used to keep a really good house, quite a few number of years ago. And that house, the unusual thing was the basement, because it was on great big huge boulders, and so we had like a little room for a ping pong table or a pool table or whatever, and room for storage and all that kind of stuff. Then back to Orange County, rented a little house in Fulllerton. You used to bring me by some great candy bars from Lakeman's Market when you worked there. And then moved. Huh?
Where was that?
Right behind Commonwealth on Walnut, I think. One of those little side streets right behind Raymond and Commonwealth. Like 3rd Street back. I think we only lived there 3 months. We just repainted the whole thing. A house. We repainted the whole house. And then the little house at 118 Primrose became empty from, I think, a really old man lived there. So we moved in there the week before Nikki. Actually, Nikki was even overdue. We moved twice when Nikki was due. And she was due around the 11th of December, and the week of Christmas, like 2 days before Christmas, we moved into that little house, and I had my first Christmas breakfast because I didn't want to leave the house, and have had Christmas breakfast ever since. So we lived there for about, I don't know, maybe maybe five or 6 years.
74.
Maybe like, yeah, 5.
She was born in what?
She was born in 69. So I guess 5 years there, and then the house where I live now for the last 20 years. So I lived in 2 houses on that street most of my life, all except for about 3 years. So Mike and Nikki grew up there, I grew up there. We all went to the same high school. Dad graduated, we all 4 graduated, Mike and Nikki graduated, and now my little grandson goes to preschool there. Same neighbors, Mrs. Hafer's still there, and Mrs. Palmer's still there. They're both widows. Audrey's still there, still divorced. Mrs. Kuhn is still there.
She is.
Reg and his family move in with her. We never see any of them. That side of the street's almost the same for 50 years now. Because those people all knew me when I was born. And the other side that I live on kind of comes and goes. But some of those people have been there forever.
Well, what else you remember? Things that your kids done growing up.
Well, they're such charmers. It's really hard to say. Mike was involved in Little League for about 8 years. Jimmy was a coach every single year. So Nikki and I went to the games, went to the practices until she started girls softball, which lasted maybe only a couple of years, so that split us up. So Jimmy really couldn't go watch her because he was always one of the coaches. Before that, Nikki was taking ballet. Since then, cheerleading, song leading, and whatever. So she's always been busy. Mike was in baseball really good until he got to high school, and the coach was so screwed up that he just said, that's it, and he's out of there. So he does his little dirt bike riding and stuff. In fact, I bought him his first one because he was on a much, much heavier motorcycle with Jimmy, and Mike sort of slid down into a whatever, the motorcycle landed on him, and we thought it broke his leg and all, so I just bought him real dirt bikes. And that's where they are right now, and they've been doing this for the last 12 years, I think. And that's what they do, and Nikki and I do other stuff like shop and stay in hotels. That's our kind of a deal. So Nikki is married and has 2 kids. One is 4, one is 9 months. They live right around the corner from us, so we see them very often, babysit them very often. They live next door, and we used to see them all the time, every single day. That was good, but they still live in our neighborhood, so this is good. So we see them. Peg and Scott live up the street. Billy, Nancy, and the kids all live maybe 2 miles away. So we get to see them all, except for, of course, you, because you live so very far away. We come up to Bakersfield about maybe 4 or 5 times a year. This year I've been up more often. And this year the whole family was here. So we used to come up always at Thanksgiving, and then we tried to come for Father's Day. And Christmas was always down in Orange County where everybody could see everybody. And the weather was so not dependable enough for us working people to have to get through the ridge. And that's what I remember.
Well, what else do you want somebody to remember later on after you're gone?
Oh, God. I don't know. I guess that I was the working person of our family. You and I had it the roughest. You and I had to do all the stuff. We weren't old enough to get away with it. We weren't young enough to be the babies. So we were the working kids. I guess I would like to live forever because I'd like to see generations go on and on and on. I think I get that from Grandma Solesbee, who had her last years really didn't even know us apart from each other. So she had bad cataracts, and so she would ask us who we were. She couldn't really even tell us by our voices, but she would ask us who we were, and she loved talking to us, loved for us to drop in on her. I sat in the recliner by the front door. Grandpa had to do everything for her, but she just had this thing to go on and on and on. So I think I get it from her. I think I get my entertaining, decorating side from Aunt Dorothy, who was my favorite aunt on that side, but died many, many years ago. In fact, all the aunts on that side have been gone for a long, long time. And also from my other aunt, Betty, who I see very rarely. But she was a great entertainer. We thought she loved having us all over, and turns out she wasn't the entertainer after all, so she moved away, and that was it. We found that out. She never liked to entertain, but she was great at it. I like living in Placentia, where I was born and raised, and probably will never move away from there. Even if I win the lottery, I've spent an imaginary $1 million and never even moved out of that house, so I guess that says something. I think I get my family loyalty, or whatever you call it, not loyalty exactly, from my father. My mother can be walked over too easy. She's too good and too easy and too trusting or whatever. But I think I got that from him. Family loyalty, my family, my immediate family, not all the aunts and uncles and cousins, but the brothers, sisters, and mother, and father, and kids stuff. And somewhere I picked up painting, and so I paint for my hobby, and it was about 8 or 10. I think I've painted now for about 18 years or something. So about halfway through, I was listening one time. They thought my parents had come to stay with me at my house, and so they did this for like the first 7 years that they moved. And I think they thought I was asleep, and they were telling I know Dad was telling Jimmy that I was good at painting. So I just laid there and listened, because I don't think we got a lot of compliments and stuff when we were growing up. And that's why I do always to my kids and my nieces and nephews, and tell them how really great they are, and my grandkids, at everything, all the time. But we always had a roof over our head, we always had food on the table, we always had what we needed when we needed it, and we always had parents there, unlike today, where the parents are gone, the mother has to work, the father this, the mother that, latchkey kids, whatever. We never had any of that to worry about. We didn't have drugs, we didn't have all the problems the kids have today, so that was good. So we're thankful for that. And I guess that's it.